The Associated Press is reporting the United States Mint is stopping making the penny. Ooh. It's actually finally happening. So give a penny, take a penny. See you later.
Yeah.
There you go.
The writing was on the wall for the penny.
Is that right? Yeah. But the penny was on the hot seat?
The penny was on the hot seat.
I had no idea the penny was on the hot seat.
Matt LaFleur, penny.
Matt LaFleur being on the hot seat is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let's bring in Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated back on the Rich Eisen Show. Good to see you, Albert. How are you?
Terrible news. I just had a conversation with somebody about how kids don't understand the value of $1 anymore.
Yeah.
It's around like taking my kids to the arcade. Because you remember when your dad would take you to the arcade when you were a kid, they would give you a roll of quarters, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's $10, right? And so you knew.
Wow.
You knew when you were there that you would have that roll of quarters, and that's all you had. And after that, you were done. And now kids go to the arcade and they have these cards, and it's like they think that's like endless money, so they could just coming back to you.
Interesting, yes.
You know?
Yep.
So like that's what I thought when I heard the pennies gone. It's like this is how we learned the value of $1 was like by actually having the cash in our hands and understanding like this is what this is worth. You know?
Yeah, man.
I feel like we're kind of cheating kids now, don't you?
Of course. It's a different day and age, Albert. Certainly back in my day, I went to the Staten Island Mall arcade. They gave away free games for good grades. I brought my good grades, so I didn't need a roll of quarters. It was my good grades, but you already knew I went to Michigan. Listen, let's start talking.
Oh, wow. What a roundabout.
Thanks for talking. See how I just
Albert. All right, Albert. Good to talk to you.
I'm a dart thrower. Listen, why is Matt LaFleur really on the hot seat? Is he really on the hot seat in Green Bay?
I mean,
Albert.
I think so. Like, I think the reason people are saying that, and I think the reason it is a topic of conversation is because of some of the turnover above him in the organization. And so, you know, Mark Murphy obviously did a great job there over the years and was there for almost 20 years. And he steps down. There's the rules there about, you know, aging out. And so he aged out. And so Ed Policy, who's Carmen Policy's son, is the new team president there.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came as the new team president, they decided not to extend Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst. Doesn't mean they won't, but they just weren't going to do it right when Ed got on the job. And so I think that creates some perception within the organization, whether it's right or wrong. Are these guys under evaluation now? And then, you know, you've got the contract for Jordan Love, which they made a decision on. You've got the decision to trade for Micah Parsons, which amps up the urgency under which you're trying to build a contender. And it kind of signals to the fan base, our time is right now. And we're trying to make the most out of what we've got with our quarterback, with the young talent that we have on hand. We believe this is a suitable team. That's what you're saying when you do things like that. And, you know, obviously there have been some ups and downs this year. I would caution people, the season's not over, and Matt LaFleur's record is really, really good. But that's why I think that question comes up. It's like, okay, we've got a new team president, which, as you know, in Green Bay is ostensibly the owner, right? And a lot of times a new owner comes in and wants his own people. And so is Ed Policy going to want his own people? I think that's what people are asking right now. The difference being that Ed Policy was working there before. He was Mark Murphy's right-hand man, so he'd been working with LaFleur and Gutekunst for a long time. But I think that's why, you know, after a disappointing night the other night against the Eagles, and after the quarterback didn't play great, why you would be looking at this, you know, if you're a fan of the Packers, if you're a person covering the Packers, and say okay, we had that little thing over the summer where he didn't get extended. And so if they're under evaluation now, then this would be a data point towards that evaluation.
All right, Albert, then let's get to a job opening that now exists with the Giants. Why did the Giants make this move, Albert?
A few things. So I think, I think that the overarching one would be the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing over and over again. There were some facts that I didn't realize until I started talking to some people there. This is the third straight year they've started the season 2-8. They haven't won consecutive games in almost 2 years now, which is wild to think about. And then, there's the way this season went and really the two big wins that they had. The first one, all the way back in September, they win with Jaxson Dart going in there, beating a really good Chargers team, right? So we're sort of we're going now, and now we got a chance to build some momentum. And then they fall off the next week against the Saints, and that's not a good Saints team. And then they beat the Eagles, and everybody remembers what that looked like post game with those guys ripping their shirts off and everything else. And then 10 days later, they blow the lead in Denver. And then that blown lead in Denver, which was, an 18-point lead going into the fourth quarter, is followed by this past Sunday. You blow a 10-point lead with 6 minutes left. It's just these patterns and these things happening over and over again. And so I think that's sort of what drove, John Mara and the owners there to the point where it's like, okay, like this is not going to get better. And then I think to some degree you also want to get a look at Mike Kafka, who, I like is very well respected. He's got the Andy Reid seal of approval. I'd say at the end for Mike Kafka in Kansas City, like Reid really wanted to see him as their offensive coordinator, and the timing didn't work out with Eric Bieniemy. So he's got that, and he's also, as he's interviewed for some of these jobs, done really well in his interviews. So I think part of it is like let's see what we've got on staff with Mike Kafka, and now we get a 2 month head start where we can kind of evaluate our organization out in the open, and we don't need to be hiding the research we're doing from anyone.
So the Dart injury now bringing about Jameis Winston, which is Mike Kafka's first move that's different.
Yep.
And the two things that one I just alluded to, Dart getting hurt might have had something to do with forcing a hand by ownership, along with the fact that there were no changes made to the defensive staff when the defense was the one that was constantly blowing these fourth quarter leads with one of the best front four that you can think of in the NFL. Certainly the best front four of a two-win team in the NFL. And I understand the Cleveland Browns might raise their hands and say, don't forget about us, even though this is not a contest anybody wants to be in. What about those two pieces to the equation here, Albert?
Yeah, so I think like going to Jameis Winston, like whether he intends to do this or not, it does have like a little bit of a new sheriff in town feel to it, where and maybe it's acknowledging something they're seeing in practice. That part I don't know. But I do think part of the deal in signing Russell Wilson, and this isn't all Russ's fault, but part of the deal in signing Russell Wilson was you had to tiptoe around him a little bit, Like I felt like when they signed Jameis Winston, it was like, okay, like this guy should be given a chance to compete. Like at this point, I don't think like Russell Wilson deserves like a free pass to the starting job yet. They declared him starter pretty early and they gave him all the starter reps. And I think like there's been this feeling even after benching him and going to Jaxson Dart, like we can't embarrass Russ. We can't show Russ up. Like, and so you're tiptoeing around him that way. And I just feel like this has a way of just kind of putting an end to all of that, right? Like where it's, look, like we're going to make decisions based on merit from here on out. This is on Mike Kafka to make these decisions, and he's got the keys, and now we'll see where he can take it, right? That effectively becomes the message that this sends to the locker room, and we'll see what the response is from the locker room. And then, defensively, I would say they are disappointed based on where they are. I think part of it is like getting the best seasons out of individual guys. And that does not mean they haven't gotten great seasons out of some guys. Like I would say like Brian Burns, like despite the team's record, is like a guy like that is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. He's played that well. But Dexter Lawrence isn't close to where he was a year ago. So how, do you look at those things? I think there's an acknowledgement that with some of the more talented guys on the defensive side of the ball, some of what's gone on the last few years has started to wear on them a little bit. And so the hope here would be that they can get a spark. And again, like I know you're talking like specifically to the defensive coordinator, to Shane Bowen, but I do know Shane's still pretty well respected in that building. And I don't think very many people there would tell you he's the problem.
All right, Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Names, give me names, because who wants to coach in the New York City metropolitan area for an ownership group that's been there, done that, doesn't like firing anybody, likes giving you some lead time? There's a terrific quarterback, Malik Neighbors, Scadaboo coming back from injury. There is a general manager already in place, so you'd have to work for that guy who's hiring you. You're not bringing your own person, one would think. Well, give me some names here, Albert.
So I think we start here. Like you're right, it's an attractive job. It's a Tiffany franchise, whatever value that might have to you, that you be, coaching for, a flagship team. Like, it's a flagship team. It's there with the Steelers and the Cowboys and the Packers is one of the NFL's flagship teams. So that's certainly, part of the equation. There's good talent on hand, depending on how high you are in Jaxson Dart. They have a franchise receiver in Malik Neighbors, a franchise left tackle in Andrew Thomas, and, franchise players along their defensive front and Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and they expect Abdul Carter to get there. That's a lot of premium positions that are taken care of. Whether or not you want to coach in New York, I think kind of depends on your personality. And there's some guys that are fits and some guys that aren't. So with all of that established, they're going to cast a wide net because they've found that like searching in one box hasn't really helped them of late. They tried the young rising offensive assistant with Ben McAdoo. That lasted 2 years. They tried the retread coach and Pat Shermer. That lasted 2 years. They tried the Battleship Commander CEO and Joe Judge. That lasted 2 years. Now they go back to offense, Brian Daboll, and that lasted a little longer, but didn't end any better. So, like, that's what the 2 months is going to give them a chance to look in a lot of different areas for the next head coach. I think they'll look at some college coaches. Like, I think Marcus Freeman, could be somebody that would be, of interest to them because there are Notre Dame connections in that building. And, Marcus has the kind of, the presence that I think they would look for in that market. Lou Anarumo has connections to the organization, was in Miami with Joe Shane, is from your beloved Staten Island.
That's right. Susan Wagner High School. Went to high school with my brother, Jeff Eisen. Yeah, man. I went to high school with his sister, Elena. See how I'm talking Staten Island. Okay.
Lou, I think, is somebody who has the connections, the experience in the market that I think makes some sense. Mike McCarthy is one that I look at, and if you're looking to stabilize things, I mean, if his worst offense was winning 12 games a year for 3 years in Dallas, like maybe he's somebody that you look at as somebody who can kind of stabilize things for your young quarterback and build a really good staff.
What about Lane? What about Lane Kiffin?
And Lane is so. I love it. From an entertainment perspective, there are two names that I think would be great for me.
I know the other one too. So you just go for Lane, and then I'll give you the
other
one.
Our purposes, okay. Lane and Belichick are the two.
Oh, Belichick. I thought you'd go Gruden.
No, for entertainment purposes, those would be the best ones, right?
Okay.
Like Lane and Belichick, because Bill's obviously got the connections to the organization. He reveres the Giants. He's got a personal relationship with John Mara.
Yep.
I just don't know that they can go down that road. But I think Bill would walk on hot coals to get that job. Lane is interesting because Lane has NFL experience, has been a head coach in a lot of different places, has built a program on his own, has developed quarterbacks, and not just Jaxson Dart. But if you look at it over the course of his history, I mean, going all the way back to SC and Matt Leinart, and I believe he was with Carson Palmer all the way back then. Like this is a guy who has been on the ground floor and developing quarterbacks. And so, like, he checks a lot of boxes. My only question is it a personality fit? What do you think?
I don't know, man. It really just depends on what the Giants want to do here.
Right. If they're okay with...
If they want to just say, let's go completely far afield of what we've done. There is Lane Kiffin. There is John Gruden. There is also, obviously Belichick. You go back to certain roots, but that comes with, a lot of other things that you'd have to buy into, even though he is going to be a Hall of Fame head coach on your sideline. You know what I mean? Because he's going to be named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame prior to the Super Bowl this year, prior to what I imagine the Giants making an announcement on this front. But, I got one more for you that I'm sure Steeler fans want to know about.
Tomlin?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now I know we're really stirring things up, but you know how Steelers fans have been talking about this and that his, and who knows what he wants to do at the end of the year.
Let me preface this by saying, I haven't heard
I bet
that
I'm sure not.
There's going to be a trade on the table yet. But I have heard in past years that, teams were going to check in on that. Over the last 5 years, I'd say I've heard of a few teams going into hiring cycles being like, oh, we ought to check in on that, and see if there's a way to work something out. All things run their course, right? So He's been there. This is his 19th year, which is crazy. I mean, he's been there, I think, 5 years longer than Bill Cowher was there, which is like wild and makes us all feel old.
Yes.
You know, I think there is a reason to believe like it could happen now or soon, though. And that's that you've got this group of players that they have now that are all older, and there is a reset coming, you know? And so after Aaron Rodgers and TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Jalen Ramsey and all these guys are gone, there's going to be like a significant retooling that's going to happen. And that's when you ask those big picture questions. If they were running off like, you know, playoff wins and all that different stuff, like, and you had a core of guys who are 26, 27, 28 years old, we'd be talking about that differently. That's not where they are. You know, so like when you're talking about like rebooting, that's not like a 1 year thing. It's like, yeah, I'm in this for the next 4 or 5 years. And you know, when you're at that point, it causes people to naturally ask those big picture questions. So again, like I haven't heard yet that they're going to be at that point, but like just speaking from like a big picture perspective and you know the way the natural course of things go sometimes, like this would be the point where the Steelers would ask those sorts of questions coming out of this. Like I'm saying, like when this core of players starts to filter out.
And assuming that what everybody is assuming does happen, that the Ravens are going to run down the Steelers here, and the Steelers are going to have a finish that leaves the fan base wanting more once again. And in terms of the AFC North, before I let you go on the rest of your day, Joe Burrow's window to practice, a 21-day window for him to practice in, and for the Bengals to have to decide to reactivate him or not for the rest of the season, that opened up this very week. It opened up a couple days ago, Albert. And so the clock's ticking for a team that's coming off of their bye. Speaking of the Steelers, this is a big game. Pittsburgh needs to come home and hold serve against Cincinnati. The Bengals now have the next 2 games to figure out, is it worth it, or does Burrow's body actually give them the answer that it's not worth it? Walk me through what you see over the next 3 weeks leading up to that big Thanksgiving night finale on NBC in Baltimore.
Yeah, so like obviously the Bengals had high hopes coming out of that Thursday night game, that Joe Flacco was going to be able to lead them to a point where it's like, okay, like we're really going to get going now with Joe Burrow as our quarterback, and we're going to be 5-4 going into our bye. And then they lose games. They lose consecutive games to the Jets and Bears, which I don't think they saw coming. And to be fair, wasn't Joe Flacco's fault. Like those were shootouts, and the defense was the culprit, not Flacco and the offense. So like now you're going into Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, and I can tell you Burrow has been throwing for a while. He's been in meetings for a while, and so this week they're going to get him. The plan, I think, like, and this is from what I've heard over the last few days, is to get him 7-on-7 work, not get him in 11-on-11 yet. They want to get him to the point where he's getting real reps, where he's going through his progressions. He's not just throwing to a trainer, right? And so like that ramps him up. And then I think they feel like the next 2 games might not be the most realistic. So that's New England and that's Baltimore. So if you're 3-6, can you find a way to go 2-1 in those 3 games? Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore. You know, and then at that point you're at 6-7, and you've got, and God, now I've got that ringing in my, because my stupid kids, they're like I said, 6-7.
I heard it.
6-7.
But if you're 6-7, going into that game with Buffalo in Week 14, I think that's what you have circled. And this is going to be kind of a convergence of Joe's comfort level, because it is a little bit of a moving target with that injury, and the team's place and the team's spot in contention. And, you know, I don't think he'll be back over the next 3 games, but I'm not going to sit there and rule him out. Like, could he find a way to play on a short week when they're not practicing against Baltimore? I wouldn't completely say that isn't happening. But I also know there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to this, and I'm rooting for it. I don't root for any team, but I would love to see Joe Burrow out there competing for a playoff spot down the stretch for sure.
Of course. I mean, I'm sure NBC's keeping it on their Thanksgiving hope chest. You know what I mean? Certainly for him to maybe return, although, Flacco back in Baltimore again, because he did it with Cleveland. Now he does it. It's great. I mean, the guy's played international games, plural, and all sorts of stuff. It's crazy. Albert, thanks again for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll chat again soon. You be well.
And I may not have done as good in school as you. My math might be bad, but I think it's 17 days.
Okay. And Albert,
you give it to him, Albert.
First of all,
you give it to him.
Hold on a second. Excuse me. I will handle this the way I can handle it. I understand you and I will be talking in the next 17 days, but it's not doing good. It's doing well, Albert. Well.
That's a typical. Hey, everybody else in the studio. That is a typical Michigan
response. No. What it means is, if you're saying typical Michigan is to speak properly, guilty as charged. Be well, Albert. Be well.
Thanks,
not
Rich.
be good. Be well, ladies and gentlemen. Albert Breer.
Be good,
here.
Rich.
Hey, Albert.
Bye,
See the
Albert.
difference? It's like 6'7".
All right. Guys.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.